Also come to order. Reports from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
PEP and from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Thursday, May 10th, 2018, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. Senate file numbers 2483, 2762, 2849, 614, 3019, 1097, 2578, and 2554, House file number 4112, and Senate file numbers 1694 and 3793.
Hearing no objections, so ordered. Calendar for the day. The first first bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 3182. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate file number 3182, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to agriculture, the second engrossment.
I recognize the member from Traverse, Representative Backer, to your bill.
Speakers and members, thank you. What this bill does is this exempts temporary storage facilities located at dry bulk agriculture facilities such as grain elevators, ethanol plants from the fugitive dust emission limits contained in Minnesota rules. We do have all stakeholders agreeing to this language. Would appreciate your support. Thank you, members.
No amendments.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate file number 3182.
Third reading. Discussion on Senate File 3182 for final passage. The member from Mauer, Representative Poppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, members. I just wanted to reiterate that this has been agreed upon. I know that a lot of work was done behind the scenes, and it's a good example of what you can do when you move a bill forward and you have competing interests and ideas, and together they came up with what the solution would be, and so I would recommend a yes vote. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 102 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 3596. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate file number 3596, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to biodiesel, the first engrossment.
Recognize the member from Pope, Representative Anderson P., to introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. What this bill does actually is a couple of things. Minnesota went to the B20 in diesel fuel as of this year. And what the bill does is allow the terminals an extra couple of weeks when they have to ramp up again from the winter blend, which would be B5 or then up to B10. They'll have a 2-week period from April 1st to April 14th to get from B10 up to B20. It was a good compromise, and it's supported by the terminals to help them get up to that the new level of B20 that Minnesota has gone to. The other thing this bill does for the truckers and those that do a lot of trucking with their diesel engines in the wintertime, It makes the number one fuel exemption from biodiesel permanent. That was set to expire in 2020, so it makes that exemption for number one diesel fuel permanent. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I would encourage a green vote.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File Number 3596.
Third reading. Discussion on final passage of Senate File 3596. The member from Ramsey, Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Anderson, would you yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Mahoney.
Representative Anderson, all year long, well, not all year long, I've been asking when you were going to have a hearing on what the actions coming out of Washington, D.C. is going to do to our farm economy. Now, the EPA is trying to roll back biodiesel standards. And I've asked time and time again, when are we going to talk about how this is going to affect 20% of Minnesota's economy? And time again, you've put me off. Are you willing to have a conversation about what Washington, D.C. is doing to the farm economy in Minnesota on its soybean issues, on the corn issues, on the pork issues, on the biodiesel issues? When you're chair of the policy committee, when are you going to have a hearing on this, on those four issues? When are you going to talk about what our Washington government is doing to our economy in the state of Minnesota?
Discussion on Senate File 3596. The member from Pope, Representative Anderson P.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker and Representative Mahoney. We've had that discussion, and as you mentioned, there's a lot of talk out of Washington about what may happen, what may not happen. And the first time you brought that up, it was concerning soybeans and the potential tariffs being put on by China. But actually, since the day that was announced, I haven't checked the last couple of days, but the price of soybeans is actually higher now than it was back on the day when those tariffs were discussed. So it's really a fluid situation, a fluid issue, and until something more concrete really develops, such as trade sanctions or tariffs and such, I don't feel that having a hearing talking about hypothetical suppositions is warranted at this time.
Representative Mahoney.
So, Representative Anderson, I'm not going to ask you a question. I'm just going to clarify what I heard. We're not going to talk about it until it happens. So we're not going to be in session, so we're not going to talk about it till next January. And next January, we'll have to get caught up on what did happen. We won't have a secondary plan. We won't have thought that process out so we could act immediately. We're going to have to take 60 to 90 days next session if there's a problem. We should have had that hearing to talk about what the trade sanctions will do to our economy or could do to our economy. We should have had a conversation in committee on what the EPA will do to our economy on biodiesel.
Further discussion. The member from Nicollet, Representative Johnson C.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Back to Senate File 3596. This is another example where the parties came together, got the work done, and it is important. And as long as we're talking about the farm economy, this is one of the things that we in Minnesota really do to support our farmers. Biodiesel adds an estimated 63 cents to that bushel of soybeans. And especially in these times, that means a lot. So congratulations for the work done on this. I encourage a yes vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. Hamilton votes aye. There being 121 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3819. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 3819, number 3 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to local government, the first engrossment.
I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Fenton, to introduce the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And House File 3819 is proposed legislation that was brought to me by the Ramsey Conservation District and the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners. The Ramsey Conservation District petitioned the Minnesota Board of Soil and Water Resources, or BOWSR, to discontinue and to transfer duties and authorities of the Ramsey Conservation District to the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners. On February 1st of this year, the Ramsey Conservation District Board of Supervisors voted to dissolve the board and then transfer the duties and authorities of the Soil and Water Conservation District to the Ramsey Board of Commissioners, and also transfer the assets, the contracts, duties, authorities of the district, and to seek the legislation allowing them to do so. The Ramsey County Board of Commissioners does support this action and has passed a board resolution that it has the interest, ability, and wherewithal to assume this responsibility. Ramsey commissioners have met with the director and staff of BOWSR and have received support from them as well. Ramsey County is committed to maintain and enhance the quality of soil and water for a healthy and clean environment for its residents. As the Board of Commissioners has affirmed, the responsibilities and authorities of the Ramsey Conservation District clearly align with the Ramsey County's vision, mission, and goals. The offices are already co-located, which would make this more of a nominal change. So Ramsey County will continue to keep a membership in the statewide association of soil and water districts so that its employees remain in alignment with their training and best practices. And with that, I will yield to questions.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 3819.
Third reading. Discussion on final passage of House File 3819. The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I would encourage a yes vote.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 119 ayes and 1 nay, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2940. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 2940, number 4 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to the environment, the first engrossment.
I recognize the member from Beltrami, Representative Bliss, to introduce the bill.
Members, House File 2940 seeks to clarify in law that the MPCA must seek legislative approval prior to raise and or establish fees, just as other agencies do. Just last year, the DNR came to the legislature and sought approval for increased fees and licenses, and the legislature granted that authority. In 2015, the MPCA's own budget requested authority to restructure the fees generated in the water and land programs. The 2015 legislature did not grant that authority. However, in the summer of 2017, the agency somehow decided that they had the authority to move ahead without legislative approval, requesting public comments on a new fee structure, and that received public substantial outcry. Again, this bill just clarifies that the process for raising the fees must seek legislative approval. I ask for your support.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 2940.
Third reading. Discussion on final passage of House File 2940. The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Bliss yield for a question?
He will yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Bliss, when was the last time the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency raised the fees?
The member from Beltrami, Representative Bliss.
Could you repeat that question, please?
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Bliss, when was the last time the Pollution Control Agency raised the fees that you said there was an outcry about?
Representative Bliss.
I believe it was in the 90s.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe it was 1992. Representative Bliss, I think we heard in testimony that there had been some authority granted, and there was differences between whether that authority continued or whether it had passed. Do you remember that discussion?
He will yield. Representative Bliss.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do remember that conversation, and it was a temporary permission from a judge, not the legislature, if I remember correctly. And I believe that did expire. And this, again, this bill just seeks to clarify that in statute that they have to come to us.
Representative Hansen.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is another in a series of bills we have where the legislature is being asked to provide authority or to act. It's another one of the legislative approval before we do anything. So it seems to be one of those tasks where the legislature would need to be in session more than the time period that we're in. If we're going to be reviewing rules, if we're going to be providing authority for fees, that the micromanaging of the legislature into the executive responsibility on this fee or any fees would seem to have us be here longer than the session we're in.
Any further discussion on the bill? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill.
Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will close the roll. Pinto votes no. There being 77 ayes and 41 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3089. The clerk will report the bill.
House File Number 3089, number 5 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to mines, the first engrossment.
I recognize the member from St. Louis. Representative Metsa.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for your patience, members. This bill, House File 3089, is essentially some changes to the mine inspector language. We've got some trails that we've invested in up in the area. It's modeled off of some work that Representative Lueck's been working on over on the Cuyuna range, and allows the safety aspects of a mine site to still be met and keeping people safe while developing those resources for essentially economic development. So this bill would allow 3 different trails to continue to be worked on, as well as some ancillary other projects throughout the region on lands that the mine inspector currently is in charge of. All the parties have come together and worked on this over the last 2 years, and the language is in good shape on it.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 3089.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Representative Metsa.
Vote green, please.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Mariani votes aye. Ward votes aye. Clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 0 noes, the bill is passed and is title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2847. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 2847, number 6 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to natural resources.
Recognize the member from Aitken, Representative Lueck, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House File 2847 simply catches up the members of the Cuyuna Country State Rec Area Advisory Committee. It was created back in the mid-1990s at the same time that we created the Cuyuna Country State Rec Area, which is the bulk of the old Cuyuna Range iron mining area right adjacent to Crosby and Ironton. What's happened over the many years is some of the players have changed. We have some joint powers boards that have dissolved or evolved into new agencies. They were named in statute, so we're just bringing that up to date. For example, we had the Croft Historical Joint Powers Board. Back when that existed, they eventually moved the Croft mine over under the ownership of the DNR, so that board dissolved. It simply brings things up to date. Folks, that advisory committee is very, very active in guiding the DNR and continuing to reclaim that entire Cuyuna Range iron mining area, so I'd support a green vote.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 2847.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. Lesh votes aye. There being 126 ayes and 0 noes, the bill is passed and is title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 2921. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File number 2921, number 7 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to local government.
Recognize the member from Scott. Representative Loonan, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill deals with existing recycling grants and broadens the scope of who can apply for them. Currently, just counties can apply for the funds that are available. My bill extends it to local governments, to tribes, to the private sector, and to nonprofits. And this money has to be used to create or increase the effectiveness of those recycle programs. I ask for a green vote.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File number 2921.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. Member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members, I'd encourage a yes vote for the bill.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Slocum votes aye. Clerk will close the roll. There being 126 ayes and 0 nays, House File 2920, Senate File 2921 is passed and its title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 4003. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 4003, number 8 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to waters, the first engrossment.
Recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Runbeck, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do have an amendment, if you wanted to take that.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Runbeck moves to amend House File number 4003, the first engrossment as follows, and the amendment is coded A1.
I recognize the author of the amendment. To your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The amendment is clarifying and narrowing language. We're talking about judges' orders imposed on residents of just the Northeast and East metro area, and it wants to make that clear that it's not affecting other areas of the metro area.
Representative Runbeck, the amendment is just being passed out, so we'll give pause to allow the members to review that amendment before we take up discussion. Representative Runbeck, to your amendment.
Mr. Speaker, again, and members, this is a clarifying amendment that narrows the impact and the meaning of the language in the bill.
Discussion to the A1 amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor of the adoption of the A1 amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion fails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Runbeck, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House File 4003 sets a one-year pause on the effective date of judges' orders that came as a result of the judge's rulings on the White Bear Lake level lawsuit. And I think most members have heard about the lawsuit. It came from homeowners on the lake who were very concerned that the lake had dropped 4 feet and was at its lowest level in history in the year 2013. They brought a lawsuit blaming the DNR. And the judge ruled against the DNR for excessive groundwater pumping in the Prairie du Chien aquifer. However, the bulk of the impact of the judge's orders fall on the 500,000 residents of the Northeast metro area in the Twin Cities, and the predominant impact falls on 100,000 residents of 12 cities within the radius of a 5-mile distance from White Bear Lake. And the map that you have that was handed out, that shows the circumference that was drawn, and it actually is a fairly arbitrary line, but the 5-mile radius is what the judge's orders are based upon. And I have letters from the cities, the 12 cities that are impacted. You'll see that in your stack of stuff that was handed out. The DNR is appealing the decision, and the cities who have to implement the orders are effectively saying that the judge overreached in an extreme manner. The orders are very confusing and actually counterproductive. So in the case of the order which says that water consumption should be limited to 75 gallons per day per capita, that in effect means that these cities, which all are still in a development mode, are going to end up building more multifamily housing, which in effect will be increasing water consumption, not decreasing it. So you've got perverse outcomes in these orders. The science that the judge cites is inconclusive, and the judge really went beyond what judges normally do, which is just maybe to say to the DNR, correct your actions. No, she actually went ahead and created policy, usurping really the legislative and executive branches from their traditional roles. So the bill would just enact a one-year pause so that all the folks that are affected can have a chance to understand these orders. Actually, there's a DNR appeal, so that may actually have some impact as well. So that would be the extent of the bill, and I urge your support. Thank you.
There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 4003 as amended.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill as amended. The member from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. This says the DNR cannot enforce the court order, even if White Bear Lake drops precipitously in the next year and some, because it's more than a year. The court order specifically says that it's pumping within a 5-mile radius that is happening that is hurting the lake. So if your communities object and say the court is incorrect, the appropriate response is to appeal the court's order. And that's what should be going on right now. You have acknowledged that DNR is going to appeal. The community should be joining the appeal or joining the amicus. We don't have the facts here to make the kind of decision that you're asking us to make. I'm guessing that nobody has read the court order, which is long and complicated. It's also saying, you know, the groundwater under White Bear Lake is limited. Everybody knows that it's limited. Some changes need to be made. Procrastination is not the answer. But most importantly, for those of us who've just been talking about the 3M decision, Some of these communities are also asking for monies from the 3M decision. A decision to procrastinate on this decision is intertwined with, for some cities, with the money for White Bear Lake. So deciding to procrastinate for a year on one probably means that you're going to have to procrastinate for a year on getting any of the the 3M settlement money.
The member from Washington, Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in favor of support of the bill. There's a couple things I want to address as we go through. First of all, I did take the time over the last couple of weeks to read the entire judge's ruling. And the judge's ruling on the base decision is very good. We did make errors. The state, the DNR, over-allocated permits and allowed excessive pumping to occur, and it did impact the lake. The remedies in general that are outlined by the court are good remedies, but in some ways they're too broad and they're having some negative impacts. Some of the examples that I can lay out very quickly is that in the areas of the bans that would apply within the 5-mile area, the cities of Stillwater, Lake Elmo, and Grant, while their wells are within the 5-mile radius, there is a distinct division where the hydrology is between White Bear Lake and the cities that are abutting the St. Croix. And the 3 cities I named, their water flow and the groundwater flows toward the St. Croix on those areas where the wells are and would have no impact on White Bear Lake. I will express, though, I am uncomfortable with the fact that there is a judge ruling on here, and in some ways we may be running up a little bit on that issue. And as a result, I was very concerned as the bill came forward. I do appreciate that it was crafted very narrowly and also very temporarily, so that gives the cities a chance to find out which ones the ruling should be applied to, and also that they continue working on the areas of trying to cut back on their groundwater usage. One of the things I very much appreciate about what was put in the bill here is emphasizing the fact while the DNR could not do any money being expended for enforcement of permits, that they could still go ahead and do the work that is needed in the northeast groundwater management area to move people to groundwater supplies, from groundwater supplies to surface supplies, and encourage that work to continue being done. So those efforts are going on, and I know the communities are working very diligently in that area. Another area I want to address a little bit is in terms of a consequence of the judge's ruling, is that in terms of the groundwater permits, if you take a look at the irrigation bans, the way the judge's ruling is in her results, is what she prescribes needs to be done, affects not only the communities within 5 miles around White Bear Lake, but those serviced by the St. Paul Water Utility, which also includes the cities of Roseville, Maplewood, St. Paul, Lauderdale, all the way down into West St. Paul, would also have to be enforcing irrigation bans. Because that is so broad in that area, that is one of the reasons that I signed onto this bill to prevent any enforcement from the DNR in those areas, because I do feel that it's overly broad and needs to be redone in those areas. I do strongly recommend to the communities that are listening to this right now from that area is that we need to continue working on moving as quickly as possible from using the system of groundwater right now to looking at ways to bring in more surface water into the area. And I know that this is going to be an expensive process and a lot of time involved, but I would encourage them to continue in those efforts and continue in the efforts that they have been doing and meeting the judge's requirements of keeping their per capita under certain limits, which all the communities are doing right now, and to continue to look for other ways to find other sources of water to meet their needs.
The member from Washington, Representative Dean M.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And when it comes to this particular piece of legislation and Representative Wagenius's views on this piece of legislation, I just want to say that I want to agree with Representative Wagenius if I only do it once while I'm here. So I want to put that on record. I actually do. Actually, she's right. The 20 cities around White Bear Lake have already filed appeals, which will effectively do what this bill does. I had Representative Fisher represents one side of the lake. I represent the other side of the lake. Before redistricting, I had Matamita and Birchwood, which Representative Fisher now has. So I've represented every single person around the lake before and after redistricting. And many of these folks have really suffered through, the drought for White Bear Lake. No one, is really fully understanding exactly what's going on, but something is going on. And they sued the DNR. Not very many people have the guts to sue the DNR. Not very many people will put their own money up and will go into that kind of a fight. And they actually did, and they actually won. And so the remedies that the judge put forward, I think, are in many cases ridiculous. But that's not what we're here to do. Those cities are actually doing things properly, and they are fighting those remedies. But when citizens say, you know what, government, even if you are the DNR, my neighbors and I are going to get together and we're going to do something, I think that's something that we should support. Those are my constituents, and I want to stand behind them today. That's why I respectfully oppose the legislation before us.
Member from Ramsey, Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Runbeck yield to a question?
She will yield. Representative Lesh.
I don't even know where she is. She's right behind me? There we go. Well, that's why. She's sneaking behind me. Okay, but I know I'm not allowed to turn around and look at her, Mr. Speaker. That was made clear to me by Representative Garofalo last year, so I'm just going to keep my back to you. No offense, Representative Runbeck. But I'm wondering if you can tell me how many court orders were issued in 2017?
Representative Runbeck.
Representative Lesh, I'm not sure that I would have any reason to know.
Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Runbeck, I think you said, I'm sure I don't have any reason to know. Was that accurate? Would she yield to a question again? I couldn't hear.
She will yield. Representative Runbeck.
That's what I said. Yes, thank you.
Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Runbeck. Well, it's in your bill on page 1.12, and I guess I'm trying to figure out here and does this mean, would Representative Runbeck yield to another question, Mr. Speaker?
She will yield. Representative Lesh.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Runbeck, in your bill here, you lay out that this action is not permitted based upon or predicated on a court order issued in 2017. How many court orders issued in 2017, if you don't know the total of how many were issued, how many court orders could impact the language in this law?
Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think if you read the rest of the bill, that it will be clear that we're talking about a particular lawsuit, the White Bear Lake lawsuit.
Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, Representative Runbeck, it doesn't say that in the bill. So when we pass laws with language, we have to state specifically what this is. So if you're alluding to a specific lawsuit, but it could impact other court orders, maybe that have anything to do with the groundwater around White Bear Lake or something else, we take great risks in that. So maybe, Mr. Speaker, would Representative Runbeck yield to another question?
She will. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Runbeck, was there testimony in committee when you brought this bill of how many specific motions or court actions or separate lawsuits there were related to the White Bear Lake water levels?
Representative Runbeck.
Mr. Speaker and Representative Lesh, we brought representatives from the cities impacted by the court order. So, and if you take a look at the amendment, that is referring to simply the area of the Northeast groundwater management area. So we are talking about a more limited jurisdiction for this bill.
Representative Lesh.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Runbeck, I'm not going to belabor the point here, but if you are specifically trying to, and I'm a little bit experienced in passing legislation to correct a court order. I think I've done it almost every year for the past 10 years, mostly with issues dealing with on a judgment or order issued by the Minnesota Supreme Court. But when you do that, you have to be pretty specific and make sure that the language that you use doesn't have implications that go farther than you intend. And I have some concerns here because it specifies court order and doesn't say judgment or final judgment either. And so if you're just saying order, that can have implications for many different aspects of not different lawsuits, but one lawsuit itself. I'm sure there were multiple orders issued in that lawsuit before the final judgment, and yet you're using court order instead of judgment. Mr. Speaker, would Representative Runbeck yield to another question?
She will yield. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Runbeck, are you familiar with the writ of mandamus?
Representative Runbeck.
Familiar with the terminology? Yes.
Okay.
Can I define it for you here, because I'm not an attorney, Representative Lesh? I'm married to one, but you know that's only goes so far. But writ of mandamus, why don't you explain it to us?
Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Runbeck, this isn't my bill and this isn't my language that I'm putting forward. So I guess I'm wondering more what your intent is rather than my knowledge of a writ of mandamus. But I will tell you, a writ of mandamus is a court action demanding that a public official carry out the duties as prescribed for that official by law. So what this bill does is it sets up conflicting laws. So the judge's order says one thing, and you have a bill proposing to do something else based on vague allusion to an order issued in 2017, which could be any one of multiple orders issued in separate lawsuits or in one lawsuit. So I'm glad you're married to a lawyer, Representative Runbeck, because this appears to me to be a full employment for lawyers bill, and your husband will be well employed. So it appears to me that this is a jobs bill. Since we're fully employing lawyers, many lawyers are going to be battling against each other to decide what exactly it is you're trying to do in this bill. And I have some severe concerns with it, because I wish you could sand the edges off of this and specify exactly what you're trying to do. I think I understand. You don't like the judge's order and you want to scuttle the order. But the language in here is vague, and I have some concerns with it because of that. And without a better answer, I'm going to be a no on it.
Further discussion. The member from Hennepin, Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Runbeck yield?
She will. Representative Clark.
Thank you. Representative Runbeck, I didn't hear an answer to the question that I thought Representative Wagenius was posing, so maybe I'll just ask it again. What, if any, impact does this have on the 3M settlement in terms of the waters that are referred to here?
Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Clark. I would imagine that there is some overlapping interests between the cities directly impacted by that and the cities directly impacted by this particular lawsuit and the orders. Whether there's been discussion about that, I'm not certain, but certainly that is an issue that's going to, I would imagine, be discussed between the cities and those who are working to use those orders or that judgment most effectively.
Further discussion. The member from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Representative Clark, for following up. When you said there is some overlapping, that acknowledges that you have a conflict between what you're doing in this bill and what's happening with the 3M order. So if you're procrastinating for a year with that, then it looks to me like you'll be procrastinating spending the 3M dollars.
Representative Runbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Wagenius, I've just been told by Representative Fabian that there is no connection between the two. So one does not affect the other. And so now I'm clear about that. So thank you.
Representative Wagenius.
The connection is you're talking about the same water. and you're talking about managing the same water. That's the connection.
Further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. There being 74 ayes, 52 noes, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar today is House File 2802. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 2802, number 9 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to the environment.
Recognize the member from Aiken, Representative Lueck, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House File 2802, we've seen this bill before. We passed it off the House Senate last year. The governor signed it. It got snarled up in rulemaking and didn't make it, so we're back doing it again. Mr. Speaker, I do have an amendment that would take into account that this should have been in law last year.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Lueck moves to amend House File number 2802 as follows, and the amendment is coded A2.
I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Lueck, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this would simply make this act retroactive to August 1, 2017, when it would have taken effect generally had they not got fouled up in rulemaking last year.
Discussion to the amendment. The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd ask for a roll call on the amendment.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Lueck, would you yield for a question?
He will. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Lueck, could you name the cities or maybe the only city that would be affected by this retroactivity?
Representative Lueck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know of at least one, St. Francis. There may be others.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, one city this retroactivity would apply to, the city of St. Francis. The city of St. Francis is the only city that this would apply to. And I would ask for a no vote on the amendment.
Further discussion on the A2 amendment. The member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, as Representative Lueck pointed out, this bill was brought forward last year. What we're trying to do with this amendment is just making sure that the people who were concerned about this issue last year at this time are also going to be covered if they did make the investment to go ahead with their wastewater treatment facility, whether it's in your community or mine or somebody else's. This just goes back and catches them and makes sure that the tentative agreement that they wanted to make, the understanding that they had at the time, that was going to be incorporated into the upgrades that they made to their facilities. This is just a common sense amendment that Representative Lueck is adding to this, and I would strongly encourage a green vote, because if this impacted your community, you'd be back here asking for the same thing. Thank you.
Further discussion to the A2 amendment. The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this is only affecting one community, a community that happens to be in the Speaker's district.
Further discussion. The member, Representative Lueck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So let's get this straight. That city is a city of about 7,500 people, small community. They just went through spending $23 million to bring their system up so it is up to all standards and providing absolutely the best possible effluent handling. So let's make sure we understand here that this is one city that I know of, but there may be more out there. And what we're trying to do here in the name of clean water is make sure we don't leave anybody behind. I would urge a green vote.
Further discussion to the A2 amendment. Seeing none, a roll call being requested, the clerk will take the roll on the A2 amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 84 ayes and 42 noes, the A2 amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File Number 2802.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill as amended. Member from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to talk about the outcome of this bill. This bill says that wastewater from a sewage treatment plant going into a lake or river doesn't have to be up to current standards. So are there any of you in this body who would want your children or your constituents to drink water from that lake or river? It's not just St. Cloud or Minneapolis or St. Paul or a number of its suburbs that use surface water for drinking water. There's some 20+ other cities that also use surface water for drinking water. So the question for this body and the question of this bill is, do we protect source water that is used for drinking water or not?
Further discussion. Member from Ramsey, Representative Mahoney.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I understand that this is a cost to small cities. It's a cost to big cities too, actually, trying to keep their effluent clean. That's very important because remember, we all live downstream from someone. We all live downstream from someone. And I understand that, you know, there's this undercurrent that the big cities are always out to toast somebody. We're not. We like our water clean too. And we pay the bills for the state more often than not. 35 cents on every dollar we send in goes out, is not spent in the metro area. And I'm willing, so that every kid in this state gets clean drinking water, I'm willing to spend more. So we shouldn't exempt them from having to improve their system or bring it up to the latest scientific standards. We should, as a state, come together and figure out a way to pay for it so that whether you live along the Canadian border or the Iowa border, not only are your kids drinking clean water, but you're drinking clean water. We fight every year for money in the PFA, and that list keeps getting longer and longer and longer. Everyone that lives in this state deserves clean water. And clean water starts at what we're pumping into our lakes and streams and rivers, or the effluent that we're pumping into it. This bill gives them 16 years to say we don't have to improve it, and we don't have to come back to the legislature to improve our infrastructure. We've spent millions of dollars around this state to give other places better water, and I'm happy to do that. Because when I go to my tap and take out a glass of clear, good-tasting water, I should be assured that it is clear, safe drinking water for everyone in the state. So this is not a good bill. A better bill would be to figure out a way to pay for all those sewer systems to be upgraded to the latest and the greatest, so that when we are pumping water into the river, it's as clean as possible. And when I'm drinking St. Cloud's water, I don't have to worry what they put into the water.
The member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just a refresher, this is the bill that was passed last year. It was supported by the League of Cities, the coalition as I understand. It was not opposed by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. And guess who signed it into law? Governor Dayton. So let's not get too wrapped around the axles on this. This is a good common sense bill. It's good for our cities. No one is being exempted from any standards. They're just simply taking the current standards and putting those into the permit. And if the city, along with PFA or whomever, agrees to make the upgrades, they're doing that, and they get the regulatory certainty for 16 years. This is real simple. It's common sense. It's things that every single one of your cities is asking for. I encourage a green vote. Thank you.
The member from Waseca, Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I also believe this is a very common sense bill. I believe all of us own a car. Not all of us own a brand new car. Some of us hold older ones. I don't think any of us would want to continually every year have to upgrade our cars based upon new emission standards by the federal government. Yet air is just as important as water for all of us to breathe. We're not saying that we want dirty air or dirty water. We're just saying that at the time of either purchasing the vehicle or the time that the water treatment plant was put in place, we're doing the best that we can, and that we ought not to be always changing that at a high cost based upon new standards. When it becomes time for renewal, that's when we apply those new standards, just as we do with our own cars. So this is a very positive bill, and I ask you for a green vote.
Further discussion? The member from Aiken, Representative Lueck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really hear some encouraging words that there's some subtle support for the bonding bill and a significant amount of dollars that would go toward PFA to continue to go out there and improve our infrastructure, our wastewater treatment plants. So that's really good news, folks. This just makes sure that we've got some certainty there that those dollars going forward are spent wisely, and we're not turning right around and redoing things. So I would encourage a green vote on this bill. Thank you.
There being no further discussion on the bill, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. There being 83 ayes and 44 nays, the bill as amended is passed and its title agreed to. Next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 390. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 390, number 10 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to public safety, the first engrossment.
Recognize the author of the bill from Sherburne, Representative Zerwas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House File 390 is identical language to what we had in the public safety omnibus bill last week. It is the language dealing with freeway blockades, obstruction of airports, and interference with mass transit. The bill would increase the criminal penalty for those offenses from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor. Now, members, over the last 2 years, we've had this debate on the floor of the House, I think 3 times previously. And so I won't belabor the debate on my end, other than to say this bill is traveling separate as a standalone bill, really at the request of the minority party. And what we want to do is give everybody an opportunity for a straight up or down vote on this bill without any other policy or budget measures mixed in with this. This deals directly with closing freeways, closing the airport, and obstructing the mass transit system. This is language that the governor on 3 separate times yet this spring has indicated his willingness and interest in signing into law. And so I'm hoping that we can pass this bill off the floor of the House here today, have the Senate take it up, and then get it to the governor as quickly as possible for his signature. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 390.
Third reading. Discussion to the bill. The representative from Hennepin, Representative Hillstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. While the governor has previously spoken about his interest in dealing with those who protest on the freeway and those who protest at the airport, he has not expressed his support for the very broad language in this bill about blockage of transit. Members, we have had this debate on this floor for a long time, and here we go again. Members, I would encourage a no vote.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Dean R.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members. You know, Representative Zerwas, this is the 3rd time we've heard this on the floor. And some of us have been more fortunate than that because we're in Public Safety Committee, and we've heard it several times there as well. You know, when you've spoken about this bill, you speak about the issue of making sure that protesters aren't blocking freeways. You know, your bill goes farther than that. It actually freeway entrance ramps as well. There are lots of things in this bill that I think people should be concerned about. And one of the things is, I don't think this bill really is about public safety. This bill is about punishment. And it's about punishing those individuals who are voicing their concerns about injustices that are happening. You know, many people talk about the issue of First Amendment rights and free speech. You'll counter, I'm sure, to say that, you know, free speech isn't unfettered, and that in many ways this goes beyond that. These are individuals that are breaking the law. I believe that if the intent of this is truly public safety, we would be doing much, much more to address the underlying injustices that people come out to protest against. I think it was last year in public safety, I asked you if your mother or father had the talk with you. And you looked at me a little bit puzzled. And I think that a lot of us today are really much, much more aware of what that talk is. And that talk is when parents of young black boys and black girls talk about how they need to act if they encounter a police officer. Because those parents have real fear every day. Every day that their children go out into the environment, if their son or daughter might say the wrong thing, not only are they almost assuredly going to get consumed into the criminal justice system, but for many of them, they lose their lives. So I would just contend that if your concern is really about public safety, you would be doing more to address the underlying causes of the injustices, whether it's poverty, whether it's disparities in education, whether it's our criminal justice system that overly arrests, charges, prosecutes, and incarcerates people of color in our state of Minnesota. So, Representative Zerwas, I'm gonna sort of borrow something that happened after Parkland, and I'm just gonna call BS.
The member from St. Louis, Representative Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, we've had this discussion, and we will continue to have this discussion. And the reason why I rise is just to name the fact that we've talked about this on the floor 3 times. This is intentionally set up to divide us and set up to make us have this debate, to make us say the things that we're going to say that make us feel like a divided state. It's just not true of who we are, and anything that seeks to divide us in this way is going to be defeated in the long run. Maybe not in this chamber today, maybe not anytime soon, but the more we seek to divide ourselves amongst race or gender or class or geography is just going to fail. And so as an ally to folks who have spoke on this bill before, I rise to say that I'm not going to be supporting this bill. And furthermore, the idea of keeping us safe, that this bill is about keeping us safe. One of the things that's been the greatest learning opportunities for me in my first term here is getting to know the folks that are a part of the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus. A first in the way that we have that in our legislature here. What a privilege to have people that have lived experiences far different than mine, who I learn from every day with the stories they tell. I grew up in Western Minnesota, moved around the state a bit, had different experiences, but I don't know the fear of growing up in a refugee camp. I don't know the fear of not being able to take public transportation because women like me get pushed into train tracks. I don't know that fear. And if I even had a small taste of what that fear is like, I would go wherever it took for my voice to be heard to make sure my family could be safe. Whether that's a freeway, wherever it is, if I'm not being heard and that's the reality of the fear in my life, I'm going to go to wherever I need to be heard. So as someone who's learned a lot from my colleagues here who have a very different experience than me, who have said loud and clear, this is a terrible bill, set up to divide us, set up to feed fear, I'm going to be a no vote, and I encourage all of you to be as well.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So again, I'm not standing up to defend unlawful conduct, not standing up to defend the Buick across the freeway, the ludicrous statement that was made or shouted over and over to inflame the public. I am going to talk about public nuisance and public safety, which this is supposed to be about, and it is not, obviously. So why are we not expanding the definition of public nuisance? Today, with this bill, this is taking us back. So if we were to think about expanding the definition of public nuisance, what would we include? Would we look at how we dealt with the subprime mortgage lenders? Was that a public nuisance? Lead poisoning, is that a public nuisance? Does that deserve criminal punishment? We can't even succeed in bringing a cause of action against corporations to prevail on lead poisoning, subprime mortgages, environmental harms. And why is it so difficult? Why do we afford corporations more protections from public nuisance liability than we are affording those individuals who are exercising their First Amendment rights? So with corporations, we say that there has to be proximate cause, that there must be an injury to the general public. So it's hard in products liability cases because it only harms those who purchase the product. It doesn't harm a public right. Well, you could say here, you look at how substantial is the interference, and is there a public right that you're trying to protect here? Instead of having those kinds of reasoned debates, all the proponents of the bill can say is, you have no right to park your Buick across the freeway. That's about as intellectual about in-depth we get on debating protest issues, free speech, public nuisance liability. So another example of where we lose in courts on public nuisance is harm caused by firearms, yet the courts have said that public nuisance does not encompass the right of citizens not to be victimized by crime. The courts also, when it comes to corporations, they look at whether there's significant interference with the public right, and they're looking for conduct that's of a continuing nature, has produced a permanent and long-lasting effect. So we know that protest freeway airports, there's already laws regulating that, prohibiting that, criminal laws. There is criminal liability. And if someone were to cause a wrongful death, there could be a cause of a civil action. In those cases, there would be some due process, some protections afforded. There have to be proximate cause. But this bill is just, that's why it goes too far, and that's why in the public they're saying it is the guilt by association, that it's too vague. It doesn't afford enough protections to individuals to avoid criminal liability. But yet we don't afford the same protections to people we do to corporations when it comes to public nuisance. And what I said when I started out, I said instead of advancing this definition, this area of law to go after harm to our citizens through mortgage lending or lead poisoning or environmental harms, instead we're going to go back to what was. Think about public nuisance when it first started. What it was that it was considered nuisances were thought of as violations of the rights of the crown, and they were punishable as a criminal offense. So again, what I was talking about before, the rule of law, that the mob mentality decides that, well, I know a crime when I see it, and this is wrong, and we need to do something about it. We need to put those people in jail if they interfere with my right to drive down the freeway, or if they interfere with public safety. There's a book out right now. It's by Timothy Snyder, who's a Yale professor. It's on tyranny, called 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. And in that book, he talks about how those that are privileged do not need to protest. What drives those protests? Inequality. Those that are privileged do not have a need to protest. But what happens, he talks about what happens when, in the face of tyranny, in the face of further economic inequality, what happens when it's not 79%? What happens when it's 95% and everyone in this room is in that category where of income inequality? At that point, those that were privileged will want to protest. And he says, by that point, it will be too late.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, well, here we go again. And I know why we're doing this again, because this is an effort to rack up political points. And it's nothing new. This has been done throughout history. But as you all know, history is written by the winners, okay? And yet sometimes the vanquished become the vindicated, and history gets rewritten. So I'll give you some examples of those who tried to raise their voices or actions in history, who were panned by their contemporaries, and they were called brigands or rebels. One, the oldest one, William Wallace, subject of a 2000 Academy Award-winning film, Braveheart. Nobody likes Mel Gibson anymore, but he still made a darn good movie. Braveheart was a good movie. And the reason why I thought of that one was, Representative Zerwas, your comments right up there this morning. I saw a little picture of Pat Kessler taking you up there, putting you on camera, and it said that it's a bill to reduce lawlessness and recklessness. And when the quote lawlessness came up, it made me think of Braveheart, because there's this scene where the local occupied village in Scotland is the subject of a small rebellion by William Wallace, who does his hero thing and runs around and tries to get his girlfriend or wife at the time out of there. Well, she doesn't make it out. And the lord of the village ties her to a post and gives a little speech to the villagers, the occupied Scottish. And he says, "I've always tried to be lenient with the application of our laws, but this day's lawlessness is how you repay me." And then he proceeds to execute William Wallace's wife in this very gruesome scene. Lawlessness is a word used by occupiers on the occupied. And you only feel like an occupier while you have the power. That can be fleeting. But other folks throughout history have had this same experience. Martin Luther, who pounded his 99 Theses into the door at Wittenberg, was not seen as a hero by his contemporaries at those times. He was seen as a brigand by the Pope and those in Rome, unless several centuries later you talk to King Gustavus Adolphus, to whom he was a hero, because he was a Lutheran. There's a lot of Lutherans here in Minnesota. I presume most Lutherans would see Martin Luther as a hero for challenging the strictures of the Catholic Church and the wrongs, and I'm a Catholic, died in the Little Catholic, seminary 3 years. We understood there were some really bad things that went on in the Middle Ages that Martin Luther called folks' attention to with those 99 Theses. And it was needed. And his voice was not one of lawlessness or recklessness as stated by the authorities of the time. Fast forwarding further, Rosa Parks, and I'm struck by Section 1 of the bill written under public nuisance, because these folks, to so many of you, are a nuisance. And think about that word for a second, nuisance. Now, if you win over these folks who are just a nuisance. But if they fail and their words are not heard, the consequences for them are unlike y'all who support the bill, having to take a detour or being irritated by a nuisance, the consequences on the other side are deaths of unarmed young men, innocent young men. Those are serious consequences to balance the other side on of simply a nuisance. And the only way we avoid that is ensuring that folks' freedom to speak about injustices are not squashed. And you can frame it any way you want, because there are plenty of people, like I said in my last speech on this, plenty of folks said Rosa Parks could have gotten justice without sitting in the front of the bus. Why did she have to be such a nuisance? Why was Rosa Parks a nuisance? Those who wrote history at the time would have called her a nuisance. But through history, she's been vindicated. So where are you going to be 50 years from now? From those folks who stood in a highway to demand justice for Philando Castile. Fast forward even further, more recently, 2012, Malala Yousafzai. I might have butchered her last name because she's only known by Malala, okay? Book, movie. He named me Malaya. My name is Malala. She was shot in the head by the strict authoritarians of the time because she insisted on going to school, something that was not allowed for girls in Pakistan at the time. And she was a threat. She was a nuisance. But her nuisance rose to such a level that someone thought that she had to be killed in order to stop that nuisance. Now, I know that's not what is being proposed in this bill. But if you have to balance which direction we're going, more freedom of speech or less, everyone knows which direction this is moving. Everyone. And yes, the extreme end emboldens those who feel vindicated by strict authoritarian ideals. And it does not matter if you're a Taliban or you're an extreme right-winger or extreme left-winger authoritarian in this country, because there are both. Because that's what we find ourselves in right now. A battle between authoritarianism and free speech. Everybody knows that our president is an authoritarian. You heard him say it when he talked about what are we going to do about these folks that have guns? What if you have mental health issues? And he said, before he had to backpedal, the NRA checked in on him and said, hey, hang on, don't say that. He said, why don't we just take the guns first, worry about due process later? The truth came out first, and then he backpedaled. This is a fight between authoritarianism and free speech. And this bill moves us in the direction of authoritarianism. There's no question there are clear reasons why this is getting brought multiple times. But I hope when you vote on this bill, you just don't think about whether or not it's going to make you popular with folks in your district this summer election season. I hope you think about what your grandkids are going to say about it in 20 years or 30 years from now. And I bring that up for a very specific reason. This isn't just in other parts of the world like Germany or Scotland or Alabama or Pakistan, where there's a fight against authoritarianism and freedom. We had right here in Minnesota, 100 years ago, exactly 100 years ago, the Commission on Public Safety. I don't know how many folks read about it. I know Representative Erdahl probably knows about it. He's Mr. History guy. The Commission on Public Safety. The commission was all-powerful, reported only to itself. They suspended civil rights, set up an armed militia, and created a network of spies, all under the guise of, if you weren't with us, you're against us. And this was during a time of war, and they were emboldened by that. People think these threats against free speech are only fleeting, but they're not. They come back around every once in a while. And we have to watch ourselves when they come up again, because this bill does not protect us from authoritarianism like that and embolden free speech. It, in fact, threatens free speech, and that's why you should vote no.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this bill has been debated a number of times. I want to point members of the public to the debate exactly 1 week ago on May 1st when there were a number of points, I think, really well made on this. So I just want to just briefly clarify a couple points now to make sure that we're super clear about what it is we're voting on. I disagree with Representative Zerwas. I'm not quite sure where he got this point. The minority has not brought this idea forward. This is not something that we are requesting to have this come up again and again and again. This is all the Republican majority bringing this forward. And what exactly have they brought forward? You may hear at various points that this is somehow about assaultative conduct or violent conduct, and of course it is not. Assault is a separate crime. This is an entirely separate issue. You may hear that this is somehow about criminalizing certain kinds of conduct. The conduct is a crime. The question is, what level do we set it at? And what this bill does is says that somebody should be put for up to a year in jail for conduct that right now is set at a misdemeanor level, significantly lower. We're going to penalize this conduct of protesting in this way at a level much higher than violence against a romantic partner, a girlfriend, or a spouse, much higher than other kinds of misdemeanors. And it's finally important to recognize this is not in response to a request from law enforcement saying they somehow lack the tools to respond to this conduct. Nothing from cities, nothing from law enforcement saying that there was this need at all. No testimony, no requests. What this is it's part of a national trend from the Republican Party criminalizing dissent. We see this in Minnesota, again, just 1 week ago, criminalizing protests around pipelines and around power plants, and in fact, criminalizing people who are associated with the people who are having those protests. We saw that recently in Minnesota, a proposal that advanced to allow municipalities to actually sue protesters for certain costs. It's hard to think of anything less American than that. And then we've seen this trend nationally. And of course, it's part of, it's no coincidence this is coming up at the same time as we're becoming increasingly aware of disparities in our society among people of different backgrounds, and when people are increasingly saying these disparities are wrong and we need to do something about those disparities. Members, we need to listen to the people who are talking about those disparities. We need to listen to the people experiencing those disparities. Last week and today, we are hearing the voices of people talking about that. I would urge my colleagues in the majority to listen to my colleagues as they make those points on behalf of Minnesotans all around our state. And after you do, to please, please vote this bill down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Further discussion? The member from Hennepin, Representative Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Here we are again talking about this bill. I would thank folks today, though, a year later, for not playing a game of cards in the back. And would like to remind people about why that day was so hurtful for many of us. Many of the voices of members of color and Indigenous folks within this body, we stood to rise in opposition to this bill. We stand again, along with our allies that we are grateful for. But here we are a year later, having the same conversation, asking to be seen, asking to be heard, asking to be believed about our own experiences, and to simply be valued. What folks are marching for in the streets, what they're risking because they are crying out for justice. They're risking because they are crying out for justice. And I wish that the members who are in support of this bill could spend one moment thinking about what it might be like to live a different experience. I mentioned last week that I walked behind the mother of Philando Castile down the light rail tracks. I would do it again in a heartbeat because I am a mother. Yes, I was trespassing. I can hear the sound over here on the other side of the aisle. And I would do it again. Because the cries of a mother who has lost her child in a way where he was shot and left to bleed out, and he was shot in front of a 4-year-old child, I would do it again because I am a mother. So I've heard this bill talked about as red meat for someone's district. That red meat, those points to be scored, is literally being done on the heartache and the loss of lives and people marching through the streets to simply call attention to their hurt and their pain and their heartache. We can do better. We can do better. We literally, moments before coming to the floor, broke bread with one another. We shared a meal in the Civility Caucus. We shared a meal together, and that matters. Listen, hear us, tackle the bigger issues, which is simply that our young people do not feel safe. Parents do not feel safe letting their children go out the door. In particular, our African American boys and our Native boys. So I guess I'm just asking you, colleagues, to see us, to hear us, to believe us, and to value our voices and the voices of those that we represent. There's a bigger issue to tackle here, which is the root cause of the problem and why people are marching for justice. I ask you to vote no.
Further discussion? The member from Hennepin, Representative Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sitting here listening to these eloquent speeches, and I'm thinking, this is really ironic. We can't seem to pass any kind of legitimate, real gun safety legislation, but yet because of the Second Amendment, which back when it was written, we were talking muskets that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But here we're ready to stomp all over First Amendment rights for people. I just want to draw the irony as you're thinking about voting on this particular bill. Thank you.
The member from Dakota, Representative May Quaid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, our founding fathers were protesters. This country is a protest. My fathers, not my founding fathers, my fathers, protesters. One drove a tractor on the highway, parked it right here at the Capitol. Another one sat in at lunch counters, did freedom rides, had the audacity to register Black people to vote. Representative Zerwas, when you closed on this piece of the public safety bill last week, you said, and you referenced a number of us, I hear you. We know you hear us. It's a domed building with microphones, but you're not listening. Members, if you're listening, you would hear what we're saying. So I want to say a little bit more of what we need you to listen to. People of color and Indigenous folks in this state wake up every day and worry about childcare costs, buying their first home, having enough money to go to college, advancing in their job, making sure they can afford their health care, their grandparents aging, pretty much stuff that all Minnesotans wake up every day and think about. But there's some more stuff that we have to worry about to literally stay alive. Because there are a lot of ways in which we are criminalized for literally being darker, for being black and brown. The way we look scares people so much that they call the police when we're golfing too slow. Moving into our apartments, moving out of our apartments, staying at an Airbnb, being quiet on a college tour, driving in a car, driving too fast, driving too slow. That is injustice, members. It is exhausting walking through this world every single day and knowing that a lot of people are scared of you because of the way you look. And it's always surprising when you see it on their face, too, because I just walk around. I just see people. But when I see people see me, or my dad, or my family, it's scary. In this body, we are responsible for the laws and policies for the people of this state. We have some of the worst racial disparities in the nation in this state. And you've done nothing. You have done nothing. In fact, I would say you've done something to make it worse. And so when people want to be heard, not just heard, but listened to, and you don't do it, they take to the streets. I think I want to change the way we talk about how change looks. Change doesn't just happen because we hope it does. Change is work. It's coalition building and organizing. And when people don't listen to the work we have built, we take to the streets. I don't want you to think of nonviolence as just people who are quiet. That's not how movements work. Movements work to disrupt the status quo for folks who have no buy-in so far to make sure things change. There's a quote that says, "If your love requires me to hide parts of who I am, that's not love. Love is never a request for silence." The same goes for this. If your comfort requires some people to experience and continue to experience injustice, then you're not doing the work. You should never be requesting more silence from people. So this bill says a lot about who you don't think belongs in our society any longer, right? Because it's already illegal to put your Buick on a road, turn it sideways. It's already illegal to protest in the streets. But this bill says, yes, it's illegal to protest in the streets, let's make it more illegal, and let's remove you from society if you do it, because I don't want to hear about your truth, because then if I know, I'll have to do something about it, right? That's the problem. So, assault in the 5th degree, false imprisonment, criminal sexual conduct, malicious punishment of a child, and protesting. I'll read it again. False imprisonment, assault in the 5th degree, criminal sexual conduct in the 5th degree, malicious punishment of a child, and protesting. Members, this bill is not about protesters, it's about us. We don't wield our power to silence dissent because we have done nothing to answer their calls for change. So Representative Zerwas, I hear you. We hear you. We get it. It doesn't mean people are going to stop protesting against injustice. It's an American response to injustice, it's civil disobedience. The American response to injustice is civil disobedience. That has been true, and it will continue to be true. But we hear you. Members, vote no on this bill.
The member from Washington, Representative Dean M.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of this bill, and some of the discussion that we hear from around this bill it's just a little bit confusing. I don't see anything in this bill that prohibits protest or prohibits the First Amendment. It's about where does that line go? Where does your First Amendment rights, how far does that take you? And does it give you the right to go out on the freeway and endanger other people? To shut down the freeway, to shut down an airport, to shut down necessary buildings and endanger the safety of others? Where is that line? Because safely protesting, protesting to get your side out, to protest injustice is an American right, and it's something that we should all fight for. It's something that is righteous. But I'm also a dad. I am trying to teach a 15-year-old girl how to drive. And she's afraid. She's afraid to drive on the freeway. We haven't gotten out there yet. We're on side streets. We're still doing side streets, and the snow's gone, so she's a little bit, feels a little bit better about that. But she doesn't understand that driving a 5,000-pound vehicle is very, very different from driving her bike around in the yard. And if she bumps into the garage door on her bike, there's a little dent. But if she bumps into the garage door in our car, she keeps going through the garage. And I hope she doesn't have to learn that way. And she's a good driver and she's doing the best she can, but she is petrified about going out on the freeway. And we'll get there. But she's going to be out there pretty soon. And she is not trained in driver's training to say, what do we do if we see people running out onto the freeway, blocking traffic, causing accidents? Is that their First Amendment right? Is it the First Amendment right to endanger other Minnesotans or to shut down an airport? At what point is causing harm and danger to other people part of your First Amendment right, and when isn't it? Representative Zerwas' bill says if you shut down the freeway, if you shut down the airport, you should go to jail because you are endangering the lives of other people in the state. That's what it says. It's not a part of your First Amendment right to endanger our children and to endanger the lives of other people. This is a common sense bill. Vote yes.
Further discussion, the member from Ramsey, Representative Mariani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This debate reminds me of just how difficult it is to be an American. It's tough to be an American. We are the people who had the audacious idea a couple hundred years ago that it is so important to create a society where we would affirm with the rule of law basic freedoms and liberties. Basic freedoms and liberties. And the further audacious idea was that we can do that and still structure a society that works, that's effective, that indeed can be safe. It's tough to be an American because we have chosen to live a balanced life, a balanced existence, choosing among difficult things that are equally important to all of us. Public safety is indeed important to us. So is freedom of speech. So is the ability to congregate and express in physical manifestation a protest of injustice, whether the injustice is created by our own government or just happens as part of long-held biases and things that we've been taught from the past. It's important for us to witness. That's who we are. It goes back to the Boston Tea Party, where you had basically an act of economic vandalism in the Boston Harbor. And yet it was so important in the face of so much oppression that we stood up and took an action. And we continue to take actions, whether it was the women's movement that eventually, through hard struggle, got the right to vote for half of our population? You don't think those women were in the streets? Decade after decade. You don't think they got arrested? You don't think they got beat up? You don't think they got jailed? Maybe worse. It's what we do. The civil rights movement, the anti-war movement, might we not still be in Southeast Asia if it hadn't been for the actions of thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans taking to the streets, trespassing, getting arrested, getting beat up. And yet through all of that, we continue to form a society that functions and that works because we believe in balance. Members, we have that balance right now. This bill disrupts that balance. You block I-94, you're going to get arrested. You're going to get charged. This bill wants to do more than that. And the more that it does, the less balance we're going to have. The less freedoms we're going to have. And for what purpose? Nothing in this bill addresses what is driving Americans. And just as the British couldn't figure it out, they didn't address the underlying cause. There are some among us who can't figure out today. They can't figure out what has been already eloquently spoken of on the floor of this House, which is that there are whole communities of people in deep, deep, deep pain as they have witnessed the senseless loss of lives of their young ones, even kids. So painful that they take to the streets, just like their ancestors. Don't destroy that balance, members. Don't do that. Don't let those who colonized this a long time ago win. Assert the balance that we have now. Know that it works. Continue to have this difficult conversation as Americans and do the tough work of creating the right balance, not passing this bill.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Omar.
Thank you, Speaker. As candidates, the most frequent question we get asked when we're at the doors is usually, what are your priorities? That's the question we get asked all the time. And the reason, I think, that people ask what are your priorities is that you can tell a lot about the person's values, their principles, in what they prioritize. And I would go out on a limb and say that when you are prioritizing inconveniences over injustices, that tells us a lot about what that side of the aisle prioritizes. Athenian lawmaker Salome said, "Wrongdoing can only be avoided if those that are wronged feel the same indignation at it as those who are not." I hope we were listening. I hope that there is some understanding about the kind of injustices that exist in our society, the systematic barriers that exist in our society that are making it so that people are pouring out into the streets, protesting, risking their lives, as they shut down highways. And I hope that as lawmakers, we are taking the time to actually understand how that process is done. And as a mother of a 15-year-old who's teaching her daughter how to drive, I wish I had the same privileges as Representative Matt Dean to only worry about teaching her how to be safe driving on a highway. Because as Representative Ray Dean said, I have to worry about teaching her how to interact with a police officer, how to exist and live in a world as a young black woman, as a Muslim girl. And when people talk about the fears that their daughters are experiencing as they're interacting with protesters who Representative Flanagan and myself have marched with, who are singing songs, holding hands, because if you have been paying attention, that is what these protesters often are doing, holding hands and singing songs. There's nothing fearful about them. Standing here talking about fearing people who are holding hands and singing songs and saying to us that we don't know what fear looks like, and not taking the time to understand how naive and tone deaf that might be to look down as a survivor of war, as someone who grew up in this country post 9/11, as a Muslim woman who wears a hijab every single day, who has to live with the words that are uttered by people in this room who say things like, we should be afraid of Muslims infiltrating our election process. The weight that hateful words like that carry, the fear that sends down to people like me and to my daughter and to my sons who visibly every single day show up in this society as an other, as someone to be feared of, as someone who is not American. I want you all to understand the privilege that you have to be seen as a person, to be seen and acknowledged by your name, and not to be described as the black man, the black woman, the Muslim girl, the hijabi, the terrorist. To not be standing in the elevator as the president of the United States and have someone clutch their purse because you are seen as a black man in that elevator. To understand the real fears that we walk around in every single day, knowing that people who pass us by the street just do not see us as a person passing down them by that street, but they see us as this and that. To know that when you are a John and you're white and you commit a crime, it says John committed a crime. But when you are John and you are black, it says a black man, a scary man, has committed a crime. No one gets to know that you are John. and you are just a man. To know that when you are white and you commit a terrorist act, that they just say 2 men walked into and bombed a mosque. They would never write 2, 3 white men came to terrorize a mosque and have committed a terrorist act. This is the kind of injustices that get to be played out in a country that is built on systematic inequality. So some of us do not have the privilege of just looking at this and saying, we need to create this policy because it makes sense. This is illegal, so people shouldn't be doing this. Some of us have to understand the nuances of why this is bad. And the last time I spoke, I talked about how in our committees, when we heard this bill, and the months and the year that has followed, we have not heard from one single county attorney, one single police chief. We have not heard from any mayors. We've not heard from any city council members. And it's not because they don't have the political willpower or the political bravery. It's because they have common sense. They have the common sense to know that this is not necessary, that the laws already exist, they are adequate. They have been able to charge people, they have been able to take them to court. There are laws that are already in the books when somebody commits a crime. But the other thing that they understand is everything else that goes along with what happens when we increase these kind of penalties. The cost that's associated, that's passed down to taxpayers because we are prosecuting people longer. The cost that's associated with this because we might incarcerate someone for this. That's what they understand. So I hope you're going to send a clear message about what your priority is as Republicans, that you are going to prioritize injustices, that you are going to fight alongside people in fighting injustices, that you are not going to further injustices by fighting against inconvenience. Thank you.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for all who spoke before. You don't leave much for me to say. And you don't leave much for me to say for a couple of reasons. One, because we debated this last week, and this is emotional. It is draining. I went home and just had to just sit still to think about all of the energy, emotions that this bill, this unfair bill, took out of me. Took out of me as a black woman, as a black mother, who took most of my life just trying to raise my kids, trying to work and be a part of a society that could be fair and just. And then woke up one day after raising 7 kids and making my way through society, clicked about the injustices, that the fight that I was fighting was entwined in policies that create practices that looked after at laws after laws after laws after policies that kept my ancestors in servitude and slavery and in a place. And one day, you know, after organizing in my community, going beyond myself and my family, trying to give back as an active citizen in my role in society, and thought, you know, what I want to do if I got to continue to live this life is that I want to be a state legislator. And I want to be a legislator because I want to create laws that are fair, that is just, that represent all of us, not just some of us. To get past the Jim Crow laws, to get to a place where we are creating fair and just laws. And so here we are today. And I know this bill is clearly a Republican priority bill for you. It has gone through the House committee, all the committees in the House and the Senate, and the Republicans have voted through the lens of how they see this bill and increase the penalties for obstructing traffic access to an airport, a highway, or public transit system. It moves from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor. So we know that this legislation is in response to protests that erupted after the death of 2 black men at the hands of Minnesota police. In late 2015, protesters rallied at the Mall of America, and they also blocked roads to the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport to protest the death of Jamar Clark. Other demonstrations stopped traffic on Interstate 94 and 35W to protest the 2016 death of Philando Castile. A man who did everything he was supposed to do that was right, that we as mothers tell our sons to cooperate, who had the right to carry, and told the police. And as he sat in his car strapped with a seatbelt on him, after the police officer asked him to show his ID, he was shot dead in that spot as a 4-year-old in the back seat. Watch. As another young lady, watch. This is what the protest is about. But it's not just about that moment. It is about a history of America and laws and policies that have been created by legislators. So we have Representative Zerwas, who lives in Elk River, who states that, that constituents, his constituents, contacted him to complain about the past freeway protests, including allegations that some were impeded by highway travel for medical emergencies. Representative Zerwas was contacted by his constituents who felt inconvenienced, I guess. A constituency that is maybe somewhere between 93, 98% white, right? And I guess, they felt that they were being inconvenienced. So they contacted Representative Zerwas. And I always wonder, Representative Zerwas, and we had this conversation, because we pass a lot of stuff in this bill that impacts other people. You know, I've heard the Republican complaints about us, you know, city folks are passing bills that's not working for rural folks. Constant complaints. But I wonder why, or if you ever talk to one person of color. And at the minimum, as a state legislator, maybe talk to me or any other of the Posse Caucus to maybe get another side of this whole protesting bill, or what is it about? Is it just about a group of people being inconvenienced? And yes, Representative Zerwas, we did sit down and we chatted when this first bill came out, me and yourself and Senator Lomer, because I was concerned about the bill that you was carrying about a group of people who have been impacted, whose lives and families are being impacted. So right now, it's a misdemeanor, carrying a fine up to $1,000 and 90 days in jail. That's what it does. That's the current law, right? $1,000 and up to 90 days in jail. And so you move that to a gross misdemeanor, which is jail up to $3,000 fine and a year in jail, or both. And then, you know, I read this article where you stated, let me quote you, that a misdemeanor has not been a deterrent to keep people off the freeways, to keep people from closing down airports. So hopefully, a gross misdemeanor will, where someone is actually booked and actually spend time in jail. That happens. It has happened. And I don't know if you think going to jail for 90 days is going to jail, but they spend time in jail. That is what happens to them. So spending time in jail is your solution. Spending time in jail is your solution to black men, unarmed black men, getting shot. Spending time in jail is your solution for those mothers and those aunties and those brothers and sisters who are feeling some pain and hurt because their son has been murdered. And your solution is to put them in jail. We don't want to hear you, we don't want to see you. That is your solution. Instead of looking to the root cause of what is causing people to march, that matters to me. That is the history of America, to protest around justice, around fairness. So I'm going to go back a little bit again to the King and the Pettis Bridge, where they have a group of hundreds of people protesting, marching, protesting, you know. And I want you to have that visual of those group of people marching over the Pettis Bridge. And I want you to visualize those outsiders who were spitting on them, throwing rocks on them, calling them names, probably saying you're blocking the bridge. Go home. And then on that Pettis Bridge, they marched for the simple right to have their voices heard through a vote. Because what was it? Was it unlawful for blacks to vote? Did someone create those laws and policies that created the practices back in those communities where they was disenfranchised? I'm sure they was breaking lots of laws based on the unfairness, the inequities of the laws that had been created by legislators. So opponents say that it would do very little to deter protesters that block highways, but it would have a chilling effect on the First Amendment rights. They say it would disproportionately jail and harm people of color, who make up a good number of those protesting police shooting of black men. But I guess that's the purpose. Lock them up. Make them disappear. We don't want to see them nor hear them. I guess that's the purpose. Lock them up. And so Representative Zerwas opened up with, let's send this to the governor. Let's send it to the governor. Because I think we have a governor that supports fairness, who knows a little bit about the history of this country and the right for people to protest. But what is even more injustice about this bill, Representative Zerwas, and what is so unfair about it, is that moving it from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor. That's the unfairness here. It is unfair because when you move it to a gross misdemeanor, you put them in a category with this group of people, with people who have committed fifth-degree assault. You put them in a category with people who have multiple domestic assaults. When you put them in a gross misdemeanor, you align them with the types of criminal sexual conduct and malicious punishment of a child. That is where you put these protesters who are walking down the street hand in hand, singing songs about freedom. That is what you do. But put very simply, Representative Zerwas and members, the punishment does not fit the crime if we consider protesting a crime. Thank you.
The member from Cottonwood, Representative Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as I'm sitting here quietly, I'm reminded of a quote from Desmond Tutu. He said, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." I was asked here a while back, what would I do if I or my family felt oppressed or felt injustice? And I said, well, I can tell you what some of my ancestors did. We fled a country. We invaded another country. We formed our own government. We committed treason to defend that government and to fight for our newly found freedoms. Not only did we take over bridges or streets, we took over an entire nation. Think about it. You know, when it comes to this, we should be asking why. We should be asking why people feel compelled to shut down streets or mass transit. And then listen to what they have to say so we can work together to address that injustice. I cannot support this bill. Thank you.
The member from Freeborn, Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I'm actually rather flabbergasted at the arguments that are coming from the other side of the aisle here. Not the arguments that we need to listen to people, because we do. We need to listen to every person, black, white, male, female. It doesn't matter what color they are. We need to listen to them. But I am frankly offended that myself and we are being accused of not caring, of racism, and all kinds of things because we're telling people that they cannot go block a freeway. And so I'm going to ask you this. I'll bring it down to my grade school level as a former first grade teacher. When we were out at recess, I did not let my students go have recess in the road because I know it was dangerous for them to play in the road. And I'm not saying that protesters are playing in the road, so please don't take it that way. But my students should not be in the road because it was dangerous for them and it was dangerous for others. Members, this is something that just should not happen. We have to be aware that it is dangerous on the freeway for the protesters, and it is dangerous for the drivers of the vehicles. It's dangerous for people trying to get to the hospital with a sick mother or a sick child. We shouldn't have these accusations. Am I an evil teacher because I told my first graders they couldn't have recess in the road? No, I'm not. It's because I cared for them. And that's the same way that this bill is. And it's being twisted into something that it's not. People should not be on the freeway, period. It's a dangerous place. So please don't accuse us of not caring or not listening, because I know my colleagues here well enough to know that we are caring and we will listen. But freeways are not the place to protest. Thank you.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Murphy E.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you, Representative Bennett. I would just call attention to an incident that happened not that long ago here in Minnesota that members on the floor have been referring to this afternoon, and that is the shooting of Philando Castile. And he was in a vehicle, pulled over by law enforcement, and he was not safe in that vehicle because of the color of his skin. And before he was able to actually engage in a conversation with that law enforcement officer, he was shot. And Minnesotans stood and rose in peaceful protest because that was not just. And that is the story that I implore you to listen to. Because his experience is not equal. There's not equity for some in Minnesota. And my colleagues have been explaining this now for 2 years on the floor of this House every time this bill comes up. And so I appreciate your playground analogy. But for too many Minnesotans, life is not a safe playground. And that is what you're penalizing. Their ability to rise and call up for us in this body to hear their cry of injustice is what we are asking you to listen to, and why you should vote against this bill.
Representative Marquardt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I wasn't going to speak until I heard Representative Murphy just speak. I am sick and tired of our law enforcement officers being second-guessed by lawmakers here. Lawmakers are the difference between law and order, and if they don't have our back or they're made to be the blame here, not only are their lives at danger, but the people they're trying to protect are at danger, because a second of hesitation can be life or death for a law enforcement officer. And like I said, I wasn't going to speak here, but I'm sick and tired of folks on this side of the aisle, quite frankly, not providing the support for law enforcement in some cases. And that doesn't represent me or the Democrats as far as I'm concerned. Protesting, we're not outlawing any legal protest here. The First Amendment doesn't protect, however, illegal activities. I think it was Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes who said, "The right to swing your fist ends where my nose begins." And so this isn't about allowing peaceful protest or not. It's about safety and danger to people who are on these highways. There's many other ways in which you can lawfully protest according to the First Amendment. But members, our law enforcement officers, when they leave their families each and every day, I want them to know they have our back, because I don't want them not coming home to a wife or a son or a daughter because they hesitated when they had to do something because they didn't feel they had our backs. So we can talk about protesters, but I'm not going to sit here and remain silent when we're questioning the ability of our law enforcement officers to protect our society, each one of us in here, and themselves. Thank you.
Representative Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, when I was writing my speech, and I wanted to share a story about why the protesting was happening, I knew this would happen. And I didn't do what I was going to do in the beginning, that I did in my last speech. And I talked about the relationship that I have, and many in my community in St. Paul have, with police officers. We have good relationships with our police officers. And this is not about the police officer. The story that I was sharing was a true story. It's not an attack on police, but for anybody, we know that none of us is above the law. And when bad actors do bad things, then we have to respond to that. This is not about attacking police. Police are not going anywhere. I have police officers who are friends, who are relatives, and more than anyone else know the importance and the value that they bring into our community to keep our community safe. And so I don't want us, I truly knew this would happen. But the facts are the facts about what happened and why people were protesting. And so I hope that we can understand, because my worldview is a worldview of an African-American mother who knows that her ancestors were lynched by those in authority. They took off the hoods and put on a uniform. Now that's the history, whether we like it or not, or how dark it is. That is the history for my community. That is the history. But does not take away the fact that I believe that police officers are needed in our community. And I don't want us to get this confused about what we're speaking about here. I do not want that to happen. But the truth of what happened in those moments and why people were protesting is real. And the fear that we feel is real. The encounters that we have, not just with police officers, not with just them, in general. And how we see this world is real, because those are the encounters that we have had. They are absolutely real in all this ugliness, in all the ugliness of it. And so the bottom line that I'm bringing forth about this bill is that the penalty, the increased penalty does not fit the protesters. What you are aligning the protester to is criminal sexual conduct and malicious punishment of a child, someone who has committed that type of crime. It does not fit the punishment. And with that, I do ask that you see that we see black and brown people and know the history of America. The country that we love, that we fight for, that we stand for. And we just want to get to a place where it treats us back with that same type of fight and fairness and recognition and value. We just want to get to that place. That when my sons and daughters go to the store, they're not followed around or become suspects just because of the color of their skin. That is real in all this ugliness. And so when black and brown people and others march and protest about injustices and unfair treatment, it is the American way. It is the American way. And for many of you in your community, that is 93, 98 more black than color, you don't have to deal with this. And so my hope is that you do a lot that I try to do, and that is build relationships with all of us in this place so that we can learn from each other, that we can expand our worldview, that we can go from what we know to something that is beyond our comfort zone of what we know. I wish Representative Zerwas had taken some time to speak to me, or someone from my community, or anyone besides the constituents from his own community to bring this bill forward. We need to spend more time doing that, making connections with other people who do not think like you or look like you. Because this is painful. This is painful. And unfortunately, my pain is not yours, so it doesn't matter. And I'm not trying to stand here to change your mind. We're beyond that. That is not going to happen. It is a priority for you. I think it's unjust, it's unfair, it's biased. It doesn't address the root causes of nothing. Hurt people are hurting, and you want to hurt them more. That's your solution. It's a little short-sighted in my mind, but I want us to recognize that this is not a police attack on our police officers, our law enforcement officers, any first responders at all. It is not. I want you to see the people who are impacted by laws and policies that we are creating in this body every single day, because we can't go beyond what we already know and think, and our ideologies gets in the way of that happening.
The member from Clearwater, Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And thank you, Representative Marquardt. To not be attacking our law enforcement, if that is the claim, then you have failed. You have failed miserably. I, as a former police officer, deputy sheriff, narcotics investigator, SWAT team member, I worked 3 reservations. I worked many communities in between in multiple counties. I went out every day to protect everyone in my area. I went to multiple calls. I comforted crying children. I gave death notifications to families who had lost a loved one, who had committed suicide. I've written many search warrants to protect people's rights because I was going to be invading their home because of the crimes they were committing. And you know what? I never lost a one of them because I wanted to protect people's rights, so I did it right the first time. I'm curious. You know, you talk about the death of that man, Castile. Any of you witnesses? Any of you see what went on in the confines of that vehicle? Any of you ever had to hold somebody at gunpoint, knowing full well if they did not comply with the orders that you're giving, you may have to take their life? Do you think that is an easy burden to carry? Do you think there's an officer out there that actually wants to do that? None of us were there. None of us were witnesses. None of us apparently were jurors. If you were a juror, raise your hand. Seeing none, then before we bring these things out, I wish people would just do a little fact checking. There was a gun. And I watched the video over and over because people would always ask me, did he overreact? Did he overreact? And clearly when the commands are given, do not pull that gun out, do not pull that gun out, do not pull that gun out. And at the end, there was shots fired. That officer didn't want to shoot. That's the scar that he will carry for the rest of his life, that he had to take another human being's life. Whether the man had a permit to carry was irrelevant at that point. It was irrelevant right from the start. If I were sitting in that driver's seat and an officer was giving me commands, do not pull the gun out. Do not pull the gun out. And if I pull the gun out, I would be in the same state. Because believe me, when you're in a situation like that, where someone is armed, and you're trying to make sure that you keep the scene under control, make sure that it doesn't escalate to a deadly force situation, the last thing you want to do is draw that weapon. And I've had to make those decisions. And I give thanks to the good Lord above that the people complied with the orders that I was giving them. Some of them were high, some of them were drunk, some of them had just been in a domestic with a family member, all of them armed. Until you have been in the officer's shoes, be careful how you judge. Because we can sit here and Monday morning quarterback everything that happened there. But in that split second when the officer has to make a decision, it's not something that he wants to do. When people ask me how it played out, I tell them I've watched it over and over and over again. And you can tell when something inside of the compartment of that car changes. It is sad and it is tragic that someone lost their life that day. I've been involved in a shooting where a man lost his life one morning. I carry that. But I'm not going to sit here idle while the very people that work, and I'll tell you what, they're Native American, they're black, they're white, they're Asian, that put on that uniform and that badge every day in all of our communities. They go out there for one thing, and that is to take care of their communities, that is to take care of the people in the neighborhoods. Like every profession, yes, you'll have some bad apples. But no one detests them more than a good officer. If they're among our ranks, we get rid of them. And with looking at this bill and having spent plenty of time writing search warrants, protecting people's rights, I look at this bill and it's increasing the penalty for breaking the law. I'm just going to read just a little something from one of my favorite books, bestseller in the whole world. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good. You will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. That is for every one of us. Me. Everyone on this side, everyone over there. I have bled and I have sweated for people of all colors, all creeds. And you know what? I'd do it all over again. Because I wasn't there to protect them because of who they were. I was there to protect them from somebody trying to do them evil. Vote green.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Zerwas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members, for the discussion again today. Thank you, Representative Marquardt, for your comments. I appreciate that. I really do. Representative Lesh talked about one of my favorite movies. Now, it gets a little bit long and Mel Gibson kind of overacts it in a few parts. But I think it's important to realize, as Representative Lesh talked about the occupiers and the occupied, what's going on. Because the reality is, the occupiers, in this instance, members, are occupying the freeway. And the occupied are literally just Minnesotans trying to drive on a road They didn't cause injustice. They didn't hurt anyone. They woke up that morning or they left their house that afternoon with hopes of making it to a meeting, to making it to a job interview, to making it down to Rochester to the Mayo Clinic, to making it to a flight to get to St. Louis to see their mom before their mom passed away. They're everyday, regular Minnesotans that are just trying to live their life. And the freeway is blockaded. The airport is closed. Or a half dozen people handcuff their arms through PVC pipes and then use U-lock bike locks on a chain link fence to lock their necks so they could completely block the light rail train. And so it couldn't move or be used. That's what we're talking about today. Activity that is already against the law. It's saying that that conduct is dangerous and we should deter it multiple times over. As this legislature increased criminal penalties in order to deter criminal activity. In fact, this legislative session, Representative Ward brought a bill to increase criminal penalty for Johns, for people that engage in prostitution. And when she testified to the bill, she said her goal in increasing the criminal penalty was to deter the criminal behavior. And so this is not a new concept. Some members talked about walking with protesters who were holding hands and singing and reading poems. And that might be the case in some instances. Members, I give you a July 2016, a quote. Police had rocks, bottles, rebar, Molotov cocktails, and other items thrown at them, said St. Paul Police Chief Todd Axtell. Those protesters must have left behind the poems. And so, members, in that one protest alone, 21 police officers were injured in that 5-hour occupation of I-94. One University of Minnesota police officer had a cinder block dropped on his head in which he fractured a vertebrae in his neck and has not yet returned to work. I bet he wished he got a poem instead, or a song. Do not fool yourself. And do not fool Minnesotans. That activity and what has occurred in a community response to violence, what has occurred for protests because organized labor wanted $15 an hour, protests that occurred because who you wanted to be elected president didn't win. Those are all examples of when the freeway was closed, of when the airport was closed. Members, in February, when the light rail was closed, the group that blockaded themselves on the light rail and used a bike lock to lock their necks to a chain link fence, their demand, members, was to disband the police. There were no poems. And so I think we ought to recalibrate on what this bill is truly about. It's taking three things that are already illegal under Minnesota state statute. And to be clear, not one member on the other side of the aisle introduced a bill this year to take away criminal penalties for marching on the freeway. Not one. And so I think we're in agreement that it's against the law to block a freeway, to close the airport, and to interfere with mass transit. And so what this bill does is it takes those three things, those narrow three things, and it says for these three things, where the activity is egregious and dangerous and has led to dozens of police officers to be injured, we are going to increase the criminal penalty for those three things. That's what this bill does, members. Please vote green.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. There being 71 ayes and 55 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions on each House desk and online. If there are no objection, we will take action on these motions first. See if no objection, the motions prevail.
New moves that Senate File number 3638 be recalled from the Committee on Environment, Natural Resources, Policy, and Finance, together with House File number 3905, now on the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Hearing no objection, so moved. Announcements. The member from Hennepin, Representative Carlson L.
It's just a reminder, DFL members of Ways and Means will meet immediately after the session in room 272.
The member from Fillmore, Representative Davids.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. The Tax Committee will reconvene at 4:00 p.m. 4:00 p.m.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Knobloch.
Mr. Speaker, members, the Supplemental Finance Conference Committee will meet immediately after session in room 1200 in the Senate building.
Further announcements. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, May 9th, 2018.
Representative Pepin moves that when the House does adjourn today, it adjourns until 10 a.m. Wednesday, May 9th, 2018. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. Representative Pepin.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Pepin moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails and the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. Wednesday, May 9th, 2018.